As our little corner of the world prepares for a lengthy winter slumber, many of our animals are already snug in their deep, dark burrows, sleeping peacefully, while those of us not destined to hibernate remain awake through the long, dark months that lie ahead. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks, and I'm your host, Ramya Amudan. This quote that you heard at the start of the show was that by Arlene Statford Wilson, and it's from Lanark County Christmas, and Christmas is upon us. Very, very close at least, and really what I wanted to highlight was the hibernation. Would you believe me if I said I searched for literary quotes about hibernation and came up with this one that I think is so fantastical because around this time of year, we all just want to be bears. Or at least everyone in my life does, because we want to hibernate. It's just not a possibility. Oh, what a woe. All right, let's take a glance at the CELA homepage. Our friends at the Center for Equitable Library Access, they put up 3 books on the homepage under the featured list. And if you go to celalibrary.ca, you will find the following titles. Blackwater Falls by Ausma Zehanat Khan. And this is a police procedural fiction book that we will be checking out later on. Artificial Divide by Robert Kinjet. Anthologies is the category for this one. And the last one up there is Love from Mecca to Medina by S.K. Ali. And this is a family stories / contemporary romance. So be sure to check that one out if you're into it. I'm loving the kinds of books being featured. And every month, every several weeks or so, the bulk is different for these featured titles, and our friends at CELA do an amazing job keeping the selections diverse and keeping our trends in the way that you would when you want new recollections, new stories, new voices, and all kinds of wonderful causes being featured as well in their blog. The CELA blog is full of incredible shout outs. So, they're working hard all the time to get these sourced out to us, and I'm very thankful myself, and I'm sure all of our friends, anybody who uses CELA, are very thankful also. We're going to be checking in with Aamer Khan today. He's had a month of fun, some real confusion as well, but definitely some categories to go over with him, mystery, romance, and some other things. Plus, we have a pause or play today after a very long time. This is AMI Audiobook Review. This is AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks, and long time coming because we haven't done it in a while. Here's Pause or Play. We've taken a glance at some of the featured titles from the CELA homepage. That's the Center for Equitable Library Access. Now we grabbed one of these titles and we're going to pause or play it. Blackwater Falls, Detective Anaya Rahman series, Book 1, and this is by Ausma Zehanat Khan. Now let's go through a little bit of the synopsis of this police procedural fiction novel. Girls from immigrant communities have been disappearing for months in the Colorado town of Blackwater Falls, but the local sheriff is slow to act, and the fates of the missing girls are largely disregarded. At last, the calls for justice become too loud to ignore when the body of a star student and refugee, the Syrian teenager Razan al-Qaider, is deliberately positioned at a mosque. Detective Anaya Rahman and Lieutenant Wakaz Saif of the Denver police are recruited to solve Razan's murder, and they quickly uncover a link to other missing and murdered girls. Anaya turns to her female colleagues, attorney Arisha Adams and Detective Catalina Hernandez, for help in finding the truth. The three have bonded through their experiences as members of vulnerable groups, and now they must work together to expose the conspiracy behind these murders before another girl disappears. A gripping thriller from one of the genre's finest writers, Blackwater Falls examines the series of crimes within the context of contemporary American politics with searing insight. Sounds like a pretty heavy one, so we're going to go around the table and find out what people are feeling. Nisreen, starting with you, pause or play on this novel?
You're right. It does sound pretty heavy, but I also feel like it's a page turner. I'm invested in just the description that you just read, so I'm gonna say play.
Okay. I mean, whenever I hear the phrase missing and murdered, I feel like there's a lot of gore that is going to come up, is going to be described in the novel. So turning over to Aamer, would you pause or play on this read?
Definitely play on this one. I do like a good mystery and a good police procedure. And this one really looks like it fits the bill. I'm also interested to see what the Colorado sort of landscape offers as well, because most of the books that I've read so far are mysteries set in California. So it'll be interesting to see what the Colorado scene looks like.
Yeah, actually, setting is a big part of not necessarily whether I pick up mysteries or not, but when I stick with a mystery, that kind of small town, the people, the communication, who knows what about what, and then where that's all set. I'm thinking of Gone Girl, though this point is moot now because I can't remember where Gone Girl was set, but I remember the feelings that were evoked from just the way that the author painted that picture of this missing girl and of how the communities reacted to that, responded to that, and then of course the police force. So really interesting, and if you want to check it out, it is on the featured list right on the homepage at celalibrary.ca. Now, Aamer, of course, we know your voice because you hang out with us right near the end of the month and you go through all the reflections and audiobook listening that you've done from the month. And today we're not getting into the good, the bad, the ugly, but we are getting into three other things. So first of all, what have you been reading in the month of November?
Well, aside from the topic of this particular segment, just been continuing on with some of my favorite series. Karen Rose, I've mentioned before, her series. I've made some forays into Gordon Corman, who's a young adult author. In terms of the McDonnell Douglas series, I've sort of picked up a couple of those books, and they've been light and fun. And J.D. Robb's Eve Dallas series, of course, which seems never to get old. I think I'm up to number 20-something now, so yeah.
Well, we can't keep track of which series you're in the 20s of, like which 20th or 30th book that you've gone into, but impressive because on top of all the regulars and the continuations, you've also got some new experiences. And as you said, we've separated these into some themes here: mystery, romance, and some real confusion. So what do you mean by this?
So I think the first two items are pretty self-explanatory. The last one I'm just going to leave to the end because I think it has a little bit of air of mystery to it in terms of what I consider real confusion. So yeah.
Okay, the mystery of the confusion. So which mystery novels have you actually gotten into this month?
So it's November, but December is coming up quick. I picked up a novel by Dean R. Koontz named The Door to December. The other novel I read in terms of a mystery is called No Rest for the Dead. It's something I mentioned in another segment before in terms of it's authored by several, I think 26 suspense authors who basically take turns writing the different chapters of this particular mystery. It's actually a book club pick for Aamer's Evening Book Club as well. But one of the more famous authors in terms of names to the book is R.L. Stine. Both of these books are pretty standard police procedures, and they are actually quite good. I've reviewed The Poet by Michael Connolly before, and these books are not quite as dark. Door to December has a touch of paranormal to it. I think that's pretty standard for Dean Koontz, although this is my first book with Dean Koontz. But I don't think it's your first time with Dean Koontz, right?
Back when we first started the book club on Kelly and Company on AMI, we started with the Dean Koontz novel, and that was a Kelly MacDonald recommendation, The City.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to looking at some more of his books. But both of these books had sort of a stock character for the bedraggled detective, the gumshoe that really enjoys his job. That's pretty much the only thing he has left. His personal life has suffered and his professional life has suffered, and they really go after trying to figure out, trying to get to the bottom of things. Door to December has a darker sort of shade to it because there's a child involved in the beginning stages and throughout the book. No Rest for the Dead has a darker shade because the entire book starts with a woman being executed. And usually when you have that kind of theme, when you think about things like executions, you're thinking back in the day of the electric chair or a firing squad or something. But this book actually takes place in modern times, so they're actually talking about lethal injection, which is, I think, pretty rare for most authors to even dive into at all. So it's an interesting book in that sense, to say nothing of the fact that you had 26 authors authoring this book called No Rest for the Dead, and honestly you cannot tell the difference between the chapters. It's very cohesive, it's very well written. The stories are really doled out really fantastically. One of the best car chase scenes I've ever read is in this book, which, I mean, for an author to depict the car scene, you can imagine the amount of difficulty that would be in words rather than pictures. But both of these novels are worth the read, in my opinion.
Oh man, I want to pick apart that for a second because, I mean, you're really into cars, but I'm curious about reading about car chases versus watching them in a movie scene. Big difference for you?
It can be. I mean, you have audio description now too. So
Yeah.
I've seen great examples of audio description. I've seen very poor examples of audio description. I think one that comes to mind is from one of the Fast and Furious movies where there's a plane involved and there's cars chasing this plane, and the audio description was absolutely so terrible you had no idea what was going on at all. So visually it might have been very stunning, but audio description wise it was totally confusing. And you can get both on both sides of that in terms of a book being able to explain something a lot better than what you see in the on screen. Sort of the opposite of that, one of my favorite movies is Meet Joe Black with Brad Pitt and Claire Forlani, and a lot of the movie is eye contact and things passing between the actors without any words being exchanged. And I saw this movie when I was sighted, and trying to understand it with audio description is not the same experience.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with mystery, going back to this again, you mentioned the kind of that stock character, and then all these other parts of the book that really intrigued you. So I'm curious about that, because when you read synopses of books, or you're trying to pick up what you're going to get into next, I don't know if you battle with this with mystery. I battle with it with mystery specifically because I'm thinking, is it going to be different enough? And especially when you're thinking police procedural and anything that involves detectives involvement, like that kind of thing, what does it really depend on for you to pick up a new series? Or would you categorize yourself as just loving mystery altogether, so you're into whatever?
I think I am, but I think for me it's always about how the story unfolds and how the characters are portrayed, including the side characters. So as I mentioned, the long-standing series, I'm sort of reading like the Eve Dallas series, which has like 60-something books, or something like the Stephanie Plum series, which has, I think, close to 40 or 30 or something like that. I mean, you have some of the same characters, but you always have these new side characters which offer a lot of color into the plot. As well as insights into the characters themselves. So for me, it's really about seeing how the story unfolds. A lot of the better sort of authors for mystery have the discovery of the main character along with the reader. So it's not always that the main character knows everything and solves it themselves and saves the day.
Yeah.
There's sort of a journey with the reader that goes along, which is excellent.
Okay, well, shout out to the supporting characters. And now we're going to move on to romance because that was the second category of this mystery romance. And what did you call it? Fair bit of confusion?
Real confusion.
Real confusion.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you read for romance?
So for romance, I split this into two. I read 4 books, and I divided them into 2 sort of categories. One is contemporary, which basically means, today, modern times. And the second is the 2 books I read were set in more medieval sort of, horse-drawn carriage type of times. And I actually liked all of these 4 books. They may not be to everyone's taste, but the first one is in the contemporary category is called, give me a second here. The Love Hypothesis. Yeah, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And she's a relatively new author to the rom-com scene, but it is a very standard rom-com novel. I will say, don't confuse this with a previous book I've reviewed, which is called The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hong. They're very, very different books. This is a much more lighter romance. Ali Hazelwood is actually a doctorate in biology, and it shows in her books. I mean, it doesn't, beat you to death with facts about academia, but it does give you a flavor of what academia is like, and you can really tell what her background is when you read the book. The story sort of centers around a PhD candidate at a university, and she realizes that her best friend is interested in her ex, and she wants to help that along, but of course her best friend does not want to engage in that. So she decides to pretend to have a boyfriend, and you can imagine where this rom-com goes from there.
All good rom-coms start with some pretending of romance.
Exactly. So it's light and sweet, and it's sort of your standard rom-com piece there.
And you had some other romance reads that you've embarked in as well.
Yeah, remind me the second one again.
Sorry Not Sorry by Sonia Singh.
So Sorry by Sonia Singh is also a very light book. This is another pick that we had for the book club that people recommended. I will say that for all the picks I have for this month, they were all very well human narrated. Some of them were just extraordinarily well done. The production quality on this one, Sorry Not Sorry, is particularly good. Everything from phone calls being sounding like phone calls with the narration and sound effects and all those types of things. So Sorry Not Sorry is basically a story of self-discovery. The main central character is South Asian or from India, but she hasn't grown up with that culture. Her parents have passed away, and it's sort of set in a style of rom-com that we're very used to in terms of, she's a successful CEO of a .com type of company, but she's trying to discover herself. She's engaged to somebody else, and somebody else has decided to ask for her help because she is the CEO of a company, and you're gonna love this one, that basically manages breakups for you.
Oh, perfect.
So this is the adult version of The Heartbreak Messenger to some degree, a book that we have read before. But basically, she's the CEO of a company that will send emails and advise people on how to break up with people gently and not be a complete idiot in that regard.
Okay. I love it. And there's one more that you want to highlight from the romance section, which is Midnight Warrior.
Actually, 2 more. Midnight Warrior by Iris Johansson and Desire by Amanda Quick. As I said before, both of these are set in sort of medieval times. Both are set in sort of classical tones of a romance in terms of the woman in distress sort of thing and the knight coming to the rescue. But the central character for both are the female characters in both. Midnight Warrior has a bit of a fairy tale quality to it, and a touch of, the main central character is a healer. So you have that going for it. It's really, really fun read. It has a really nice ending, which I won't spoil for anyone, but it was a surprise to me, and very sort of classical lines of, a woman who wants to go back home, which is in a secret, undisclosed location. but she's been employed to heal people, which she struggles with in terms of what to do with both of those. And you have this sort of businessman of the era who she starts to encounter and fall in love with. So that's that one. Desire by Amanda Quick. Amanda Quick, I've mentioned before. She usually has a touch of goth or darkness and mystery to her novels, in terms of strong female characters set in sort of Victorian times, but there's a strong mystery element and sort of dark undertones to her books. This book is not like that. Desire is much more of a light romantic book, set in sort of classical lines. The main storyline is basically a strong female character who lives on the island of Desire, which stereotypically makes perfume in the Middle Ages. And her husband has passed away, and she's looking for a husband, but she has certain requirements for her husband, which basically gets the ball rolling in terms of the storyline.
Well, that perfume making sounds like a story in and of itself.
Oh, the author uses it to maximum effect. Let me just put that way.
Looking forward to that one. Okay. So what's the book count at now? Like 8 already for the month? We haven't even gotten to our last category yet. I'm just letting people know, this is how much reading we do in November. Okay. So the final and best for last category of real confusion.
Real confusion. So I'm going to go all the way back to ancient Greece and use a quote from Aristotle, who says, every story, I'm paraphrasing, every story must have a beginning, middle, and an end. He goes on to define what all of those mean. I think we've all come across books which don't meet this category. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. And I am going to go through 3 books, maybe, which don't follow this trend. And I was totally confused because, well, I didn't know what I was reading. And when I finished it, I wasn't too happy. The first is No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy. This is a very famous author, so I really wanted to pick up a good work from him. This has also been put into a movie, which is very famous. There are books about Cormac McCarthy and his moralistic writing, and how people basically study his writing. So he's a big deal, and I wanted to get a sense of what his book might be like. But after reading it, I'm not sure I'm ready to pick up another one.
Oh, okay.
So it sounds like a tall order, but the big faux pas for me for this book was it starts off with a thriller style story unfolding with a man coming across a drug deal gone bad, where he picks up some money. Nobody else is left alive, and he decides to take the money and run. Interspersed with this particular storyline is the sheriff of that particular town, talking about sort of intergenerational America and how America has changed between the different wars it's been involved in and how those generations have been different. So from the pacing of the book, you expect both of these storylines to meet at some point, or that both of these storylines will continue to the end. But very strangely, the storyline for the man who finds this drug deal gone bad just abruptly ends when the sheriff gets a call and is asked to identify a body, and it happens to be this particular main character. And we're about halfway through the book at this point. Yeah, we're about halfway through the book at this point, and there is no explanation given to actually how this person died, even though for pretty much half the book we've been following his movements and activities in terms of the different struggles and challenges he's been going through and evading people and getting away with it, and then suddenly he's just dead. The rest of the book continues with the sheriff sort of still muttering about intergenerational America and revealing to his great uncle, some secrets about his own past. But it doesn't seem cohesive, or it doesn't seem natural for that storyline to continue. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. To build something up so much and then just have it end with a phone call that is not explained at all is very anticlimactic for me.
Wow. And speaking of which, we are wrapping. So really quickly, can you give us one more of this real confusion example?
Meredith Rich is someone I had not heard of, and I decided to pick up one of her books. The book is called Tender Offerings. and it's a romance. And she does a great job of sort of bringing her characters to life throughout the book. Everything from a single mom whose baby's father ends up becoming a Hollywood star, but she doesn't want to tell him that he has a kid, and all these kinds of different mercurial characters, like a billionaire, and you have the billionaire's son who's trying to gain his approval, but the billionaire is not interested, and you have all these great characters running around, but at the end of the novel, nobody actually finds love, and it's very frustrating because it's a romance novel and you're expecting something to happen, and after you read it, you're just left flat.
This is frustrating for all of us. Wow. Yeah. Is this what real life is supposed to be like? Or fantasy life?
My first thought after reading the book was like, we have enough of this in reality. We don't need to read about this.
Exactly. Where's my happily ever after? Aamer, thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure.
Some serious head scratchers at the end of that one. Aamer Khan joining us at the end of the month for some audiobook reviews and reminiscence. We'll be back next week, and until then, happy audiobook listening.